Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. SkyCommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by SkyCommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. Ever looked up at a drone buzzing overhead and thought, I wonder who actually makes the rules for those things?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? And it's something a lot of people are curious about.
Exactly. So that's what we're getting into today. The world of Canadian aviation law, but specifically how the drone regulations actually come about. These legal frameworks, they can seem really complex, almost like a maze sometimes. Our goal today is really just to, shine a light on it, make it clearer.
Absolutely. We're going to try and unravel the system that governs drone operations right here in Canada. And to do that, we need to look at the key documents, the building blocks, really.
Okay, like what?
Well, we'll start with the Acts of Parliament, specifically the Aeronautics Act. Then there are things called statutory orders and regulations, SORs for short.
SORs.
Those lead to the Canadian Aviation Regulations, the CARRs. We'll focus a lot on Part IX because that's the drone part.
Gotcha.
And finally, there are transport publications, or TPs, which kind of help explain it all.
Okay, so think of this as like your backstage pass to Canadian drone rules. We want to demystify the whole hierarchy, the process, figure out why it's set up this way.
And what it actually means for you if you fly drones, or even if you're just interested.
Right. So let's dive in. Where does it all begin? The foundation.
The Aeronautics Act. That is absolutely where it all starts. It's the fundamental law for, all of Canadian aviation.
Right.
It's an act of Parliament, so it's gone through the House of Commons, the Senate, got royal assent, the whole deal.
So it's the main federal law setting the stage for aviation rules, including drones.
Exactly. It provides the legal authority.
But, and this is interesting, the act itself doesn't have all the nitty-gritty details, does it? Like, it doesn't say fly 10 feet from this window.
No, exactly. It doesn't get bogged down in that level of detail.
Yeah.
What it does, crucially, is grant the power to someone else to make those detailed rules.
Yeah.
There's basically a principle in there that says something like, the minister can make detailed aviation rules. Simple phrase, but huge implications.
So it delegates the authority. Who gets that authority?
That authority from the Aeronautics Act goes straight to the Minister of Transport.
The minister, okay.
But, the minister isn't drafting these rules personally late at night. That's where Transport Canada or TC comes in.
Right, the government department.
Yeah. They're the regulator acting under the minister's authority. And this delegation is actually really important, especially with drones. Technology changes so fast, right? Parliament couldn't possibly pass a new law for every little tweak needed.
Yeah.
So giving the power to the minister and TC allows them to adapt the regulations much more quickly.
Okay, so Transport Canada is like the operational arm, turning that high-level authority into actual rules.
Precisely. They have broad responsibilities. They enforce the act, sure. But importantly for us, they draft the CARs, they propose changes, they implement safety programs.
Everything aviation, including drones.
Exactly. The minister holds the legal power. Transport Canada puts it into action.
All right, so the minister, working with Transport Canada's experts, makes these detailed rules. Where do we find the actual, official, legally binding versions of those rules?
Good question. That brings us to the statutory orders and regulations, the SORs we mentioned.
Right, SORs.
These are the legally binding rules issued under the authority of an act, in this case, the Aeronautics Act. The minister, often with cabinet approval, writes and approves these.
Think of them like specific legal commands.
That's a great way to put it. Specific commands within the bigger framework of the act.
And they have those official sounding numbers like SRR 96433. What's that code all about?
Yeah, it looks complex, but it's actually quite informative. SOR just stands for Statutory Order and Regulation.
Okay.
The 96 tells you the year it was registered in 1996. And the 433, that means it was the 433rd regulation registered that year across all of government, not just transport.
Wow, okay, so it's like a timestamp and serial number.
Pretty much. And what's really neat is that specific one, SRN 96433, that's the legal document that actually created the Canadian aviation regulations, the CARs, back in 96.
So that single SOR number marks the birth of the CARs. That's cool. And we see other SORs too, right? Like SOR 2019-11 popped up when the main drone rules changed.
Exactly. Amendments to the CARs or completely new sets of rules under the Act, they all get issued as new SORs.
So SOR 2019-11 was an update registered in 2019, the 11th one that year.
Precisely. These SORs are how the rulebook evolves. Maybe, a more recent one, SOR 2020-something, might have added rules about flying near power plants or something. They directly impact how you operate.
Which leads us right to the CARs themselves, the Canadian aviation regulations. If SORs are the individual announcements, the CARs are like the compiled rulebook.
You got it. The CARs are the official, legally binding rulebook for all aviation in Canada.
Yeah.
Enforced by Transport Canada.
Like a library of rules.
A well-structured library, hopefully. To make it manageable, it's divided into parts. Each part focuses on a different area.
Okay, so it's not just one giant book of doom. What are some key parts? Just to get a feel for the scope.
Sure. You've got Part 1 for general provisions, definitions, overarching rules. Part 3 is aerodromes and airports. Part 4 deals with personnel licensing, pilots, controllers, mechanics. Part 6 is general operating rules for aircraft. Part 7 is commercial air services, airlines, charters. And the big one for us, Part 9's remotely piloted aircraft systems.
RPAS drones.
Yep. And there's also Part X on safety management systems. So breaking it down helps find what you need.
And Part 9X, that's the key chapter for anyone flying a drone that's not just a tiny toy, or if they're flying for work or research.
Yes, that's the critical thing. Part 9X specifically applies to RPAS drones between 250 grams and 25 kilograms.
So heavier than a couple of hockey pucks, up to about 55 pounds.
Right, and used for anything non-recreational. The core idea isn't just don't crash. It's about safely integrating drones into the airspace, minimizing risks to people and property, other aircraft.
Setting clear expectations.
It's exactly for pilots or manufacturers. If you're flying for work, research, even volunteering sometimes, Part 9X is where you live, legally speaking.
Okay, so we found the drone zone in the rulebook. How is Part 9 itself laid out? Is it just a massive list of don'ts?
Well, sometimes it feels like it. But no, it's organized too, into divisions, makes it a bit easier.
Divisions. Okay.
Division B is general provisions, definitions, again, who the rules apply to, reiterating that 250 to 25 kilogram non-recreational thing.
Got it.
Division 2 gets into the general operating and flight rules. This is the meaty part.
Like what?
Weather minimums, the absolute need to maintain visual line of sight, VLOS.
Can't fly it watching a screen alone.
Right, max altitude 400 feet above ground level usually. Rules for flying near people, buildings, airports, and the requirement for a pre-flight site survey, that's section 901.27, lots of Division 2.
Sounds like the core how to fly legally stuff. What else?
Division 3 is all about pilot certification. Requirements for basic and advanced certificates, age, tests, staying current.
Okay, the licenses.
Then Division 4 covers RPAS safety assurance. This is more for advanced operations, lifting drones that meet higher safety standards verified by TC.
So for the riskier flights.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, Division B outlines what drone manufacturers need to do, design standards, documentation they have to provide.
It really is like a mini rule book just for drones inside the bigger cars. You mentioned section numbers like 901.27. How do those numbers work? Can we decode them?
You definitely can. They're pretty logical, actually. Take 901.25, that's the 400-foot altitude limit.
Okay.
The 9 tells you it's in Part 9. The 01 tells you it's in Division 2, the General Operating Rules part. And the .25 means it's the 25th specific rule within that division.
So 9, 21, 25. Part division rule, like an address.
Exactly. It gives you a clear path to find where that rule fits in the structure.
That makes navigating it seem much less scary. Now, I've also seen things like reserved or repealed written in the cars sometimes. What do those mean?
Good catch. Those show the rules are alive, they change. Reserved just means they've saved that number, maybe for a future rule, but there's nothing active there right now. It's a placeholder.
Okay.
Repealed means there used to be a rule there under that number, but it's been officially removed. It's gone, no longer in effect.
So, tells you if a spot is empty or if something was taken out, useful. Okay, so we've gone from the big act of parliament down through the SORs into the detailed cars, specifically Part 9X for drones. But you mentioned transport publications, TPs, at the start. How do they fit in?
Right, the TPs. These are official guidance documents from Transport Canada. Now, super important point, TPs are not law.
not legally binding like the cars.
Correct. They don't have that same legal force. Their job is to explain the law, clarify things, give guidance on how to comply. They're often really helpful for studying for exams.
So more like the user manual or the study guide for the legal rules?
That's a perfect analogy. They translate the often dense legal language of the cars into more practical terms.
Any key TPs for drone pilots?
Oh, yeah. The main one is TP 15263. Its title is Knowledge Requirements for Pilots of RPAS.
Sounds important.
It is. It's basically the study guide for both the basic and advanced drone pilot exams. It tells you what you need to know and how TC expects you to apply the rules in real situations.
So the cars say what the rule is. The TP helps explain how to follow it and what you need to understand about it.
Exactly. It bridges that gap between law and practice.
This whole setup seems pretty structured, but rules change, especially with tech like drones. How do these regulations actually evolve?
Great question. That happens in a couple of main ways. One is intentional and formal.
Like plan changes.
Yeah. Industry feedback, consultations, Transport Canada holds, maybe lobbying from different groups pushing for changes. TC often asks the public for input on proposed rule changes.
So people in the drone world, even individual pilots, can actually have a say.
Absolutely. Reporting safety issues, joining working groups, giving feedback through associations, or directly to TC that can influence things.
Okay, what's the other way rules change?
More reactive, you could say. Driven by safety incidents, or maybe a whole bunch of complaints about something.
Like problems cropping up.
Exactly. Think about all those drone sightings near airports a while back. That definitely spurred Transport Canada to look hard at the rules and tighten things up around aerodromes.
So changes come from planned improvements and from reacting to real-world events and safety concerns.
It's a dynamic process.
It really is. Okay, to try and wrap our heads around this whole flow, could we maybe map it out like a legal ladder or something?
Yeah, I like that analogy. A legal ladder. At the very top rung, you've got Parliament passing the Aeronautics Act. That's the big "we need air" laws statement.
And foundation.
Right. Then the Minister of Transport, using the power from that act, issues the statutory orders and regulations, the SORs. Those are the specific legal actions creating or changing rules.
Like SR 96-433 creating the cars.
Exactly. Which brings us down to the the Canadian aviation regulations.
Right.
Think of those as the detailed chapters of the law book. Within the cars, you find Part 9, the chapter just for drones.
Or section.
Yep. And then supporting that, you have the transport publications like TP 15263, acting as the plain language guide to help you understand and use the cars correctly.
So maybe a quick way to remember the flow is ACTR cars, ATP, from the top law down to the guidebook.
That works perfectly. ACTCASAR cars EP. Or another way to think. ACTs are the basic principles, CARs are the detailed blueprints, and TPs are the instructions on how to build or operate safely according to those blueprints.
Okay, blueprints and instructions, I like that too. This really helps make sense of what seemed pretty complicated. So the main thing to take away is that drone rules in Canada aren't just random, they're part of this layered system.
Yeah, a carefully built system. It starts high level with Parliament and gets more and more specific, all aimed at keeping things safe and legal.
And understanding that structure, it actually empowers you, right? If you're flying drones or just interested, knowing why the rules are there and how they fit together is pretty valuable.
Absolutely. It's not just about memorizing rules, but understanding the framework they exist within.
For listeners who want to dig deeper, maybe check the actual cars, where should they go?
The best place is Transport Canada's website. They have an online database for the cars. You can search it by part number, like Part 9, or even by keywords. It's pretty handy.
We should definitely put a link to that in the description for everyone.
That's a good idea. It's the official source.
And since these rules do change, how can people keep up with updates?
Well, officially, new SORs and amendments get published in the Canada Gazette. That's the government's official newspaper, basically.
Okay.
Transport Canada also puts out things called Civil Aviation Safety Alerts, COSAs, and advisory circulars. Those often have important updates or clarifications. And like we said, keep an eye out for consultations on proposed changes.
So always be learning, basically.
In aviation. Always.
It really highlights that this isn't just a static rule book, it's alive. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to chew on. Think about this whole structure we've talked about. How does it try to balance the incredible speed of innovation, especially with drones, against that critical need for safety in our skies? And maybe also consider how your own awareness, your feedback, could actually play a part in shaping where these rules go next.
That's a great point. It's a balancing act. and participation matters.
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.